Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Partee, and today I will be talking about my data science experience with Erase Child Trafficking nonprofit. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so today I will briefly discuss what the data science challenge was. I'll talk about the plethora of information that I learned, and then I'll conclude with the impact of my work. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so starting off with child erase trafficking, this was a nonprofit company that was advocating for stopping human sex trafficking in the age groups of children and toddlers. So essentially, this company had a main website and they also had a few social media platforms. They wanted people to access their Facebook platform because that was their main means for advertisement and marketing. And they wanted to see, okay, right now, this is where we have most of our clientele, this is where we have most of our engagement and outreach. And room for improvement, what was working well for them, maybe what was possibly working not so well. So that was my job as part of the data science challenge to access their dashboard to see likes, comments, shares, all of the types of statistics that dealt with their posts. You can go to the next slide. Starting off what I learned, I will say this was my first data science experience ever, so I definitely learned a lot. I learned a lot when it came to cleaning data because when we did originally have access to the dashboard, besides the basic information when it came to their likes, comments, shares, mentions, or even reposts when it came to their individual Facebook posts, we got information related to demographics, what type of people were liking, what age group, what gender, maybe even region or location information, what country, what states and cities. Though this may have been relevant when it came to their nonprofit hosting events, in our case, it wasn't as relevant. So it was important for me, for one, to learn how to clean house data, take in the information that was relevant to my specific project, my specific task, and leave the rest to the side. Essentially, another thing that I learned that was important in data science was visual representations. My background in computer science initially started off with programming and coding, so I never really thought about visual aesthetics as much. But in this case, one thing that the nonprofit did tell us directly was that there was room for improvement when it came to our visual aspects. So in the bottom left corner, I attached one of the sample charts that we used. This was going to be a representation of one of their posts on how their Facebook likes were doing. And they were just saying at a glance, it was a little hard to read and draw conclusions, though we did provide them with notes and comments for each type of visual aid that we had. They were just saying compared to the circle graph in the top right corner where you can see just by taking a glance at it, in this case, okay, 45% was in the likes. So they would see when it came to engagements, they had to make sure whatever types of posts there were something that the users would like. In addition to finding conclusions when it came to what was doing well for them, we also were able to tell them what types of posts gave them the most engagement. In the bottom right corner, I attached the screenshot of a sample of one of our slides, which came with the overview of notes and comments on what posts were doing well. In this particular case, their live streams were giving them the when it came to engagements with their clientele. So we were able to tell them maybe possibly you can keep these in routine because this will keep people more active. But certain posts that they had that were just generic about what their company mission was good for informational purposes, but was not something that they needed to, but they can just probably keep in a home setting or an about us setting. So that was really important for us, just knowing what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and just analyzing the data. One of the main methods that my group used was logistic regression. Basically, we were just seeing the current trends and patterns, and from there, able to predict what types of posts were likely to do well, what types of posts where maybe they should probably try to stay away from, and maybe new things that they can consider adding to. Another thing that I learned was Tableau. Prior to data science, I've never really heard of Tableau, so I didn't know exactly what it was, but they told us that when it came to making our findings visually appeasing to where they can glance at it and be able to have some type of uh, like be able to take facts from what they're just seeing from looking at the chart. They were saying that Tableau could have more features. Like in our case, when we had the simple little graph with lines, we could have probably had more bolder lines or lines with certain dashes in it that can show them, okay, these types of posts were well, these types of posts, we need to stay away from. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so the impacts of my work, we did end up placing second, which was very exciting for me because, like I said, this was my first data science experience coming from just someone who strictly writes programs. Just knowing that this was for a good cause to stop human trafficking really meant a lot to me. But with that being said, this does conclude my 5-minute lightning talk. I thank you all for taking time out to listen to what I have to say.
Thank you so much, Kayla. Very important work. And if you have any questions or want to reach out to our presenters, please put the message in the chat. And you can also make connections as well. Our next speaker is Courtney Payne, and she's going to talk to us about the Garden Initiative for Black Women's Religious Activism. Courtney?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Courtney Payne. I am a junior sociology and anthropology major, public health minor from Atlanta, Georgia, attending Spelman College. Today, I'm delivering my lightning talk presentation on my experience as a research assistant at the Garden Initiative for Black Women's Religious Activism. The title of my presentation is Fruits of the Garden, which illustrates the growth I was able to accomplish during my time at the Garden Initiative. Next slide, please. To reintroduce my name is Courtney Payne. I am a junior sociology and anthropology major, public health minor attending Spelman College. I participated as a research assistant for the Garden Initiative during my spring semester last year, as well as my 2022 summer. Next slide, please. Diving deeper into the purpose of the the Garden Initiative is a 3-year digital and physical archival repository project funded by the Henry Luce Foundation. This is a digital humanities project, meaning by the end of the 3-year period, the analysis of the historical implications made by Black women religious activists will be categorized into a physical and digital archival repository and website. The co-principal investigators for this project were Rosetta Ross, professor of religion at Spelman College, and Monique Moultrie, professor of religion at Georgia State University. Next slide, please. During my time as a research assistant, I conducted extensive research on Black women religious activism. Specifically, I researched Black women's specific roles within religious activism in the United States. With this in mind, I was required to view religion as an expansive field of study, as well as expand my view of religion to include diverse religious practices such as Hinduism and spirituality. Additionally, I studied how Black women's religious activism impacted their local and global communities. Through this, I was able to specify how religion impacted the type of activism Black women participated in. Next slide, please. As a sociology and anthropology major, I am always itching to learn something new and to immerse myself deeper into the interconnectedness of society. The Garden Initiative held this sentiment close to its heart and was consistently exposing me to something new through my research. For example, I was able to use my technical skills through learning Microsoft Excel to land a local job at a bookseller. Additionally, I learned that Black women are the backbone of many historical movements, religious or not, but this was only shown to me when I learned that research that is worthwhile takes patience, precision, and practice. Most importantly, however, the Black women I studied led with their faith in so many various ways. I was able to learn that personal faith is truly personal. Next slide, please. So, to conclude my lightning talk, I end with a quote that reminds me of the humanism each Black woman I studied brought to their religious practices, specifically their religious activism. Given to me through Ellipsis, the collected writings of Charles C.H. Long, he quotes African American religion and its subsequent cultures began to establish another basis for the human. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you so much. Really informative presentation. Thanks, Kaylin. Our next presenter is Ihunanya Destiny Agamua, and she's going to wait. Our next presenter is Kaylin Carey, who just came in the room. So glad to have you, Kaylin, and joining us today. She's going to talk about The Time Is Now. Kaylin, are you able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera there? Okay. When I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the presenters. So bear with me a quick moment here. Uh, Kaylin, are you here? So let's see. Kaylin is here. And are you able to unmute yourself? It should be on the upper left. There's a mute button. So hopefully you'll be able to unmute yourself there. All right, I think we're having technical difficulties with Kaylin, which sometimes can happen. That is okay. Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
We can hear you now.
so
Great.
sorry. I was on and I was talking. I don't know why.
All good. All good. You allowed me a moment to get the slide situated. So great to have you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen to advance the next slide. Just say next slide.
Perfect.
Great. It all works out. Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
Fantastic. Take it away, Kaylin.
Okay, perfect. So the time is now. My name is Kaylin Carey. I'm currently a PhD candidate under the direction of Dr. James Lillard at Morehouse School of Medicine in the MBI department. Next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to start here to talk about COVID-19's mortality in the US by race and ethnicity and educational attainment. So number one, approximately 6.5 million people have passed away during the COVID pandemic. And this has been horrifying for a lot of us, losing colleagues, people have been dear to us, friends and family. And as you can see here on this chart, we see that it's been stratified between men and women amongst different age groups of 25 years old and older, between ages 26 and 64 years old, and above 65 years old. And as you can see, those who are of the older population tended to die more, unfortunately. However, we do also see a disparity amongst racial and ethnic groups. So we can see that American Indian or Alaska Natives have had higher mortality rates in comparison to those in other ethnic groups. However, all of those that have been shown to be in racial and ethnic minority groups have had higher mortality rates in comparison to non-Hispanic white groups. And so why is this? Next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about health equity. And if you can see here in the middle slide where the arrow was pointing, that is what health equity is. So normally people get the same amount of care based on what is available. However, health equity looks to give people based on need. So that way that resources can be allocated according to those who need them. Now, as I talked about previously with the pandemic, we obviously saw major health disparities. And I think a lot of us could not turn a blind eye to it. And what we can say is that these have been closely linked with economic, social, or environmental disadvantages. So that could be relating to people's ability to work in certain environments, as well as live in certain environments and eat certain foods. And so this is obviously a big problem because our healthcare system right now has been based primarily in equality, which is sameness, and equity is based in fairness. And there's been barriers to access for some communities. So we must try to ensure equity before we can all enjoy equality. Next slide. So I've had some experience working at Biogen. Specifically, when I was there, I interned with a group that I really love, which was Office of Corporate Global Diversity and Inclusion, as well as organization effectiveness. And I was able to intern directly with the head of that group. And from that internship, I learned vast amount of information, specifically relating to the strategic pillars that the company had, but also with my own passion, which was patient engagement and education, increasing representation in clinical trials, increasing medical publications and engagement of key medical experts. And this was very important because it helped me to engage conversation around strategy about these different perspectives, as well as telling the story internally, so those who work within the company, and also externally to the people who would potentially be patients, as well as access. So I worked with them to coordinate a sprint access team for underserved patients in order to have access to aducanumab, which was their first Alzheimer's drug and currently the first FDA-approved Alzheimer's drug. And at the time, they were going through the FDA process. Next slide. So this was extremely important and vital to what brought me to where I am today. So currently my study interests are in ovarian cancer, the omentum, metastasis, immunology, bioinformatics, and the tumor microenvironment. However, my career, I look to hopefully take some of this big data genomics conversation, but also empower communities that are indigenous communities with health autonomy. So people having access to healthcare and also getting the resources that they need in order to have the best quality of life. So thank you. And that will conclude my talk today.
Thank you so much, Kaylin. Great to have you. Our next speaker is Destiny Agamoa of Spelman College, who did work under Dr. Myron Williams. She's going to talk about a modeling of anaerobic metabolism towards the simulation of the production of biogas. Destiny?
Hi. Can you guys hear me? You guys
We
see?
sure can. Go for it. And when you want me to advance to the next slide, just say next slide.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Washington.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Inyunana Destiny Agamo. I am a graduate of Spelman College, class of 2022, where I received a BS in biochemistry. I'm here today to discuss a research project that I started in 2021 with my research advisor, Dr. Myron Williams of Clark Atlanta University. As a title, modeling of anaerobic metabolism towards the simulation of the production of biogas. Here we go. Next slide, please. As global consumption continues to rise, volumes of waste only increase. Our changing climate seems to be a barometer used to measure the benefits and the deficits of up-and-coming technological advances. Anaerobic digestion both eliminates organic wastes and produces energy-rich methane that can be used to produce heat, electricity, or even vehicle fluid. This is a cleaner and greener alternative to the usage of natural gas or fossil fuels. The problem that we've seen is modern digesters designed to recover biogas often lose their methane producing capability, and we are trying to optimize the process to help build a more sustainable ecosystem in the future. Next slide, please. The goal of our project was to undertake the computational modeling of communities of bacteria in archaea to produce methane as a metabolite. Anaerobic digestion is a naturally occurring phenomenon that occurs in the digestive tract of ruminants, like cows. At least 4, but up to many dozens of different kinds of microorganisms cooperate to convert organic wastes, such as dead plant matter, to methane by a very complex set of reactions and pathways. By using computational visualizations, we were trying to analyze the biochemistry by describing some of its individual components in hopes of gaining a predictive capability of the process. Next slide, please. When looking to how to transfer biochemical information into a computational format, my research advisor prompted me to investigate Bernhard Paulson's textbook and online course on computational modeling dynamics in control and metabolic networks. It helped outline how to track a biochemical pathway such as glycolysis and how it can be displayed into a stoichiometric matrix as a first step to simulating pathway behavior. In front of you are 2 pictures. The picture on the left displays the first 2 reactions of a common biochemical pathway, glycolysis. And the table on the right displays how the pathway can be described as a stoichiometric matrix, where each metabolite S1, S2, S3 is related to an enzymatic reaction that creates or destroys it via the V1, V2 symbols. Next slide. We were able to take the last 7 steps in 22 metabolites of 2 methane-producing pathways and transfer the chemical stoichiometry into objective numerical values. A value of 0 means that the metabolite was not acted on by a particular enzyme. A value of 1 means that the metabolite was produced by the enzyme, and a value of -1 would mean that the metabolite was consumed by the enzyme. Dr. Washington, would you mind going back to the previous slide?
Sure.
It's much more easy to visualize in this diagram on the right. As you can see, glucose is SN1, is S1, and it's being consumed via reaction 1, and nothing happens to it in reaction 2, which is symbolized by the 0. Thank you. That's good for that slide. We also created elemental matrices that represent the chemical composition of each metabolite. The next step within our investigation was to confirm that all reactions were balanced by multiplying our stoichiometric matrix by our pathways elemental matrix. Paulson hypothesized that the stoichiometric matrix multiplied by the elemental matrix would yield a 0 product if all details were correct. When we attempted to do the multiplication using MATLAB, we found that several values were non-zero. Therefore, we still have work to do in terms of the correct representation of balanced reactions for this pathway, which is necessary for the computation. Ultimately, we would create matrices to represent the typical concentrations of metabolites in a digester and quantitative parameters associated with the enzyme's activities to simulate the flow of metabolites from complex molecules to methane. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. That was really great, really informative work there.
Wow.
And every references in MATLAB. We'll be having a MATLAB workshop in December. Great. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
Wonderful. Awesome. Our next speaker is Stephanie Holloman Curtis of Clark Atlanta University, who's going to talk about visualization of crime rates in Boston. Stephanie?
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Great. Again, my name is Stephanie Holloman Curtis. Today I will provide a visualization of crime rate in Boston. I've never really been into data science, but as a graduate student, we had to have this for our class. And while in the class, there was a data set that was introduced with RStudio about the crime rate in Boston. As an advocate and one passionate about human rights and services, I was curious to know why they were in their data set was being used in RStudio. I Googled it, crime rate and data, and these are two facts that came up that really piqued my curiosity and caused me to go ahead and practice in RStudio to break down the data. The first being that there are 795 cities in the US, of which 652 cities are safer to live in than Boston. And as of January 2022, the national average rate per square mile of crime is 31.1. But Boston experiences 399 instances of crime per square mile. So that was curious to me. Why is that happening? Why is it so high? So I met with my professor and we decided to do some breaking down of the data in the data sets in RStudio. Next slide, please. Okay, in this slide, in this presentation, I will show two variables. I'll use two, crime rate and population. So here, where this is the raw data, you'll see how high the crime rate is showing and that it is right skewed. So it has no outliers or what have you going on here. It's just, this is just the raw data. Next slide. Now, here on this slide, we took the data and added the log function to it. And with the log function added, it created a normal distribution. So you'll see the difference in the outliers are stretched out on the end, and you can see the peaks of the crime rate going up. The next slide, please. And then we looked at the population. Again, right skewed, you see how high it is on this slide. The next slide, please. Here, we approach this with the log function again, same as with the crime rate. And you'll notice in the center there, right at the median, is really, really high. But what is interesting about this is that it broke the population down by status. So you have a higher percentage of the lower status citizens within Boston that are impacted by this crime rate or participate in this crime rate. The next slide, please. Now, this is what gives clarity, a little clarity. We use the scatter plot here. And if you'll notice, the dots are all running together and it's in the percentage of the population. And you see the little blue line going up. So we're going to go to the next slide and really dissect what all this data is saying, because what happens on the scatter plots is that we marry the two variables. We marry the population and we marry it to the crime rate. Next slide, please. Wow, look at this. So it really breaks it down. 30% of Boston's crime is done by the population of the lower class, the lower status individuals in the city, in that city, which is a scary thought. Now, as a citizen, as an elected official, What do you think is really happening? This tells a lot about Boston and what is happening within their city with their citizens. Next slide, please. And again, here's another scatter plot showing you what's happening. It's concentrated in our lower class. Okay, next slide, please. I think that's one we just did, just showing the 30%, how it was concentrated in our lower status of population. Now, what has happened is the conclusions are basic. When the crime rate is a socioeconomic factor that has negatively impacted the crime rate in Boston. You can tell that as the population is increasing, the crime is increasing. So with that being said, what is happening with the lower population, the lower class population in that city? I think, and according to the data that supports it, is the city officials need to really look at and do an assessment of what services are being offered to the lower class citizens. Are they given opportunities to develop their work ethics, to establish or sustain themselves financially? I think that once a deliberate focus is placed on the resources provided to the citizens of Boston, that the crime rate in Boston will decrease. Next slide, please. And the information that I've used for this is coming from the FBI Uniform Crime Reporting Statistics, our hub, and from the data system, the census from 2020. And that ends my lightning talk about the visualization of crime.
Thank you, Stephanie. Real informative. And just for the people in the audience, you're welcome to put things in the chat. And also, if you take the poll, you can see the poll results. And with that, I think that closes out our Lightning Talk 1 session. So thanks everybody for coming here today. Did I get everybody?
No.
We have one more. Who do we have?
Yes.
I don't think I have her slide. Does someone have her slide? Yeah, I agree with everybody. That was really great presentations, informative, professional, just really well done. That was fantastic and amazing. All right, can somebody send me Kirsten's slides? Thank you all for waiting patiently there. While I wait for somebody to email me a PDF copy of Kirsten's, I know, amazing slides.
I don't know if it'll help, but I can share it myself.
Try it. Yeah, please do try it. I apologize for the delay.
No.
Are you able to share it?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. You know what to do. So our next speaker is Kirsten Cook, who is an amazing graduate student at Clark Atlanta University.
Can you guys see my screen?
We sure can. So, yep, you'll make that full screen. And the trick is, do you see that little hide on the little bar at the bottom? Perfect. Take it away. Thanks so much.
Okay, no problem. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Kirsten Crook, a second-year MPA student here at Clark Atlanta University with the concentration in Human Resource Management. Today, I'll be discussing the 2019 statistics of supervisors by race and sex from the Chicago Police Department. So just to start, this data was created using RStudio. In our first box plot, we see the white race of supervisors broken up by male and female. There's about roughly 850 white male supervisors on the contrast to the 200 roughly on an average of females. So we see a big difference in the amount of males to female in the white race, and it just shows a very high gender inequality. Moving forward to the Black race, we see the same consistency with more male supervisors than females. These numbers are roughly about 175 males on average and about 70 females on average for this race. Also, moving forward to the Hispanic race, we see the same consistency with about 140 on average of Hispanic male supervisors, on the contrary to the roughly 30 on average of Hispanic female supervisors. For our last race of Asian, we still see the high contract comparison of male supervisors at about 222 male supervisors and about 4 actually female supervisors. So not only is there an issue with gender inequality, there's an issue with racial inequality as well. If you look at the first histogram, you will see that the Asian, Black, and Hispanic races are close in numbers in supervisors, whereas the white race is almost completely different in another category of the amount of just supervisors as a whole. And this is very important because it shows that not only are the gender of females lower, it's the race as a whole of whites that is much higher in just supervisory positions in Chicago Police Department. And just to see all of the races put together on this box plot, we do see how I just described the race of white Americans as much higher than the rest of the Asian, Black, and Hispanic. So just to kind of sum everything up, it's showing a clear problem with racial inequality and gender inequality. And it also shows that progress has been made from 2019 to now, but this is still an issue that needs to be addressed because it affects human resources for one, and public administration as a whole. And I believe, yes, this concludes my slides. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. That was really great, really informative. And a super huge thanks and a round of applause to all of our speakers. Y'all did an excellent job. You do us proud. You do great work, really impactful. I love to see all the variabilities in how you're using data science. Fantastic work. Keep up the great work. And for right now, we are going to take a break. So we just encourage everyone to go to the expo session or put your feet up for a quick second, grab a cup of tea, maybe in your AUC data science mug. And we will see you back here for a Lightning Talk 2 session at 2:05. Again, don't forget to stop by the expo hall. And if you haven't already, bookmark the afternoon networking session. Students to be paired one-on-one with industry and graduate school representatives. So more in store for today. See you soon at 2:05. Thanks again, speakers. Y'all are awesome.